I looked down upon the valleys bathed in sunlight. Rivers glimmered faintly, snaking through the distant greens like veins of light. I could see rooftops far below, specks of civilization resting quietly under the vast sky. Yet, even with the world below, Thursina felt untouchable, like a realm suspended between heaven and earth. The breeze at the edge carried the scent of pine and stone, pure and grounding. It reminded me that peace isn't found in isolation, but in perspective. From here, problems felt small, life felt simple, and every worry dissolved into horizon. The edge wasn't a place of fear, it was freedom, the boundary where you see everything clearly. Thursina offered that clarity. The beauty of distance, the calm of height, and the serenity of knowing you're part of something immeasurable. As we began preparing breakfast, the sunlight filtered to the pine trees, painting golden streaks across our campsite. The scent of brewing coffee mingled with the earthy fragrance of dew-soaked grass. Laughter returned to our voices, lighter now, as if the sunrise had burned away the last traces of fatigue. Someone played soft music from a small speaker, and the melody blended perfectly with the morning rhythm. The rustling of leaves, the distant chirping of birds, and the whispering breeze that moved like poetry between the trees. Every sound seemed amplified by peace. I remember sitting on a rock, holding my mug, and staring again at the horizon where the sun had risen just an hour ago. It felt strange how something so ordinary, a sunrise that happens every day, could feel like a private miracle when witnessed in the right place, with the right people at the right time. Satila Serapan, kami berkeliaran di sekitaring Bukit Thursina, menjelajahi jalan setapak, kesel yang di Penyahai Bunga, layar dan bata berlumut. Yudara peginungan tetap sejak dan lembut, membungkus kami seperti Selamat yang menggeber. Setiap beberapa menit, Caesarang akan berani untuk mengambil foto. Tidak dapat menahan diri untuk menangkap apa yang tidak dapat dijelaskan oleh kata-kata. Saya menyaksikan awan membentuk-bentuk di atas puncak yang jauh. Kadang-kadang menyerupai naga tau kepo yang berlayar di langit. Dunia di bawah tampak damai dan sederhana. Tambal sulam hutan ladang, dan jalan berkelak-kelak yang berkelon samar di bawah sinar matahari. Pada saat itu, saya menyadari betapa mudahnya kita melupakan keindahan yang ada hanya beberapa jam dari kekekalan kota. The warmth became stronger, yet it was still pleasant. The shadows of trees shrank, and our tents glowed softly in the sun's reflection. Some of us lay on picnic mats, resting and chatting lazily, while others packed their gear. The hill had transformed, from a mystical, fog-covered place at dawn to a bright, vibrant haven under the full sun. The soundscape changed, too. The whispering wind was replaced by the hum of insects and distant laughter from other campers. I looked again toward the east, remembering how that horizon had exploded with light just hours before. The memory already felt like a dream, fragile but vivid. If I closed my eyes, I could still feel the sun's first touch, the crisp mountain air, and that rush of wonder that made time stand still. As the sun climbed higher, the golden tones began to dissolve into a brilliant daylight. The mist that once floated like a soft veil over the valley now shimmered like silver smoke before fading into transparency. The mountain range revealed its full majesty, every ridge and contour etched sharply under the growing light. We could finally see distant villages awakening below, smoke rising from morning fires, faint echoes of roosters, and people starting their day unaware that, from above, they were part of a grand landscape painting. I felt a strange sense of gratitude, not for any single thing, but for being alive, for witnessing something so ancient and real. The air had lost its icy edge, but still carried a cool freshness, like the breath of the earth itself. My friends and I stood silently for a while, each lost in our own thoughts, but our smiles said everything. The sunrise had filled us with a quiet joy, one that would remain long after we left this hill. Standing near the cliff's edge, I looked down upon the valleys bathed in sunlight. Rivers glimmered faintly, snaking through the distant greens like veins of light. I could see rooftops far below, specks of civilization resting quietly under the vast sky. Yet, even with the world below, Thursina felt untouchable, like a realm suspended between heaven and earth. The breeze at the edge carried the scent of pine and stone, pure and grounding. It reminded me that peace isn't found in isolation, but in perspective. From here, problems felt small, life felt simple, and every worry dissolved into horizon. The edge wasn't a place of fear, it was freedom, the boundary where you see everything clearly. Thursina offered that clarity. The beauty of distance, the calm of height, and the serenity of knowing you're part of something immeasurable. Though the sun was now high, the spirit of dawn refused to leave. The light on Thursina didn't fade. It lingered, soft and forgiving, bathing everything in a quiet luminescence. The tents glowed faintly, their fabric warm under the sun, while the hills shimmered as though dusted with silver. It was the kind of light that holds memories, the afterglow of wonder that stays long after the moment has passed. I stood still, unwilling to move, afraid that any step might break the spell. Around me, life continued. Birds flew, insects hummed, the wind whispered. But inside, time paused again. The hill had shared its story, and now it rested. Thursina was no longer just a place we visited. It had become part of us, a sunrise we would carry in our eyes and hearts long after we descended its slopes. When we finally began clearing the table, no one was in a rush. Each of us seemed to linger in the moment, reluctant to let it end. The remnants of our meal, crumbs, empty cups, bits of conversation, felt like echoes of a perfect morning. Someone took a candid photo, capturing our smiles and the scattered mess of breakfast, freezing it in time. Later, when we would look back at that picture, it wouldn't just remind us of the food or the place, but the warmth of being together, a fleeting, golden memory from Bukit Thursina that would live forever in our hearts. As we continued eating, the conversation turned nostalgic. Plans for future trips, memories of past adventures, and stories that made us all laugh until our stomachs hurt. The sky grew brighter, the sun warming our shoulders, while the mountain breeze balanced it with just the right chill. Someone played soft music from a small speaker, adding a gentle rhythm to our moment of calm. Around us, the scenery of Bukit Thursina stretched wide and serene, the perfect backdrop for the kind of peace that only comes when you're surrounded by nature and good company. It was a reminder of how simple happiness can be, a shared meal, laughter, and the open sky. The night had fully embraced Bukit Thursina, wrapping the campsite in a calm, velvety darkness broken only by the glow of our campfire. The flames danced gently, crackling like whispered laughter in the still air. Around the fire, we sat in a loose circle, jackets zipped, hands wrapped around cups of hot drinks, faces illuminated by the flickering orange light. The mountain breeze carried a crisp chill, but the warmth of the fire and the quiet companionship made it feel just right. Somewhere beyond the trees, faint city lights blinked like distant stars, reminding us of how far we come to find this peace. The soundscape of the night was simple but beautiful. The occasional chirping of crickets, the faint rustle of leaves, and the steady hum of the fire. Conversation flowed slowly, softly, as if the mountain itself was listening. Someone shared a funny story, followed by bursts of laughter that echoed briefly before being swallowed by the night. There was a sense of intimacy that only the wilderness could create, the kind where words weren't always needed. Sometimes a glance, a smile, or a shared silence said more than anything else. The glow from the fire painted our faces in gold and shadow, making the moment feel both timeless and fragile. Later, someone pulled out a small portable speaker and played an old acoustic song, mellow and nostalgic. The music blended perfectly with the crackling fire and the scent of burning wood. Some of us hummed along quietly. Others just leaned back in their chairs, lost in thought. The flames reflected in our eyes, each spark rising like a tiny dream, disappearing into the dark. It was in these moments that the noise of everyday life felt worlds away. The mountain, the stars, and the laughter around the fire created a rhythm that slowed time itself. The night didn't need anything else. It was already complete. The morning at Bukit Thursina began in a hush so deep that even the wind seemed to pause, as though nature itself was holding its breath for the arrival of something sacred. I remember sitting quietly at the edge of the hill, the earth still cool beneath me, damp with the lingering dew that settled during the night. The tents, orange and pink, stood like silent guardians of our little adventure, their thin fabric catching the faintest whispers of dawn. Around us, the world was still cloaked in soft blue twilight, and only the silhouettes of the mountains whispered against the sky. Bogor, from this height, looked like a dream slowly waking up. The air carried that crisp scent of pine and wet grass, the kind that makes you feel alive in every cell of your being. There was no sound of cars, no buzz of the city, only the gentle rustle of leaves and the slow rhythm of our breaths. We waited there, wrapped in jackets and quiet excitement, watching the dark horizon begin to blush with light. The stars faded one by one, retreating into the heavens as the sun prepared its grand entrance. It was in that stillness that I felt something indescribable, a sense that we were standing on the edge of time itself, witnessing a miracle that happens every day yet feels different every time you see it. Then, just as the first bird began to sing, a soft, hesitant melody, the horizon cracked open with gold. A single ray of sunlight sliced through the mist, delicate but fierce, painting everything it touched with warmth. The tents glowed softly, as if they had come alive, their colors deepening under the newborn light. The mountains revealed their faces, layer by layer, from shadow to silver to emerald green. The world below, once hidden by darkness, suddenly unfolded like a secret. Trees sparkled with dew. The valley shimmered faintly, wrapped in a golden veil. For a moment, we said nothing. There was nothing to say. Words felt small against the immensity of that sunrise. I could hear my heart beating, steady in awe, as if it too was greeting the light. Every second stretched, slow and eternal. I remember thinking that no camera could ever capture this feeling. The quiet awe of watching the sun rise over Thursina Hill, the first warmth brushing your skin after the chill of dawn, the soft tremble of the earth waking beneath your feet. The sunlight grew stronger, climbing higher, burning through the mist like a painter brushing away fog from his canvas. The mountain peaks began to glow, crowned with gold, their ridges casting long, dramatic shadows across the valley. In that moment, everything felt perfectly balanced. Light and shadow, silence and sound, warm and cold. It was as if the world had been reset. I closed my eyes for a second, breathing in the fragrance of the morning. The grass, the faint smoke from a campfire that burned low during the night, and the scent of the earth itself, alive, ancient, forgiving. The wind carried whispers of stories untold, and somewhere below, the forest rustled awake. I thought about how small we were, Our tiny camp perched on this vast green shoulder of the earth, and yet how infinite it all felt. The beauty of Thursina wasn't loud. It didn't demand attention. It was humble, patient, like an old friend who simply sits beside you and reminds you what really matters. Peace, gratitude, and the gentle rhythm of life continuing, no matter what. When the full sun finally emerged, bursting free from the ridges of the mountain, the entire hill seemed to exhale. The cold air softened into warmth, and a soft golden haze wrapped around everything. The tents shimmered, the grass sparkled, and our shadows stretched long and thin across the slope. We laughed then, quietly at first, then louder, as though joy itself had been waiting for permission to rise with the sun. Someone brewed coffee. The aroma drifted to the morning air, blending with the scent of wildflowers and smoke. I took a sip and felt its warmth spread through me, grounding me to this moment, this hill, this sunrise. I thought about how life rushes past us in cities, in noise, in endless to-do lists, but here, everything slowed down. Time was no longer measured by clocks, but by the movement of light. The sun climbing higher was the only signal we needed that a new day had begun. There was a strange comfort in that simplicity. No notifications, no distractions, just us, the hill, and the sun. The light touched the mountains beyond, revealing layers of beauty that had been hidden in the night. Bogor's valley shimmered with light below us, and the horizon stretched endlessly, painted in shades of gold, amber, and soft pink. I remember turning to see everyone's faces lit by the sunrise, eyes glowing, smiles effortless, each of us lost in our own thoughts, yet somehow deeply connected by this shared silence. It felt as though the sunrise was speaking to us without words, reminding us that the world is vast, that we are lucky to witness even a fraction of its beauty. And in that light, something within me shifted. The fatigue from the climb, the cold of the night, the small discomforts of camping, all of it melted away, replaced by a quiet joy, the kind that doesn't shout, but hums softly in the heart long after it's gone. I realize that this is why people chase sunrises, not just to see the sky change color, but to feel themselves change with it. Thursina's sunrise wasn't merely light breaking the darkness. It was hope taking shape, warmth reclaiming cold, and beauty reminding us to look up once in a while. As the sun rose higher, the world grew brighter, and the laughter around our tents became a song, unrehearsed, imperfect, but full of life. As the sun climbed higher, the world around us began to glow with a deeper, gentler warmth. The chill that had lingered through the dawn slowly retreated, replaced by that familiar softness that comes only with early morning light in the mountains. I could see the thin mist drifting lazily between the trees below, moving like pale smoke from a dream that refused to fade. The dew on the grass shimmered like countless tiny diamonds, catching the sunlight and scattering it back into the air. Every breath I took felt new, clean, full of life, untouched by the rush of cities. The laughter of my friends blended with a faint hum of cicadas beginning their morning songs. Somewhere down the slope, the distant call of a rooster echoed through the valley, a simple yet timeless sound. We didn't speak much. We didn't need to. The silence that followed was not empty. It was golden, alive with meaning. It was a kind of quiet that made you listen to your heartbeat and realize that peace isn't found in grand moments, but in small, unspoken ones like this. The sun's rays touched our faces, soft and forgiving, as if blessing us for waking early to greet the day. In that golden silence, we understood what it meant to be truly present, to simply exist, breathe, and belong beneath the vast sky of Thursina Hill. The colors of the morning deepened as the sun continued its ascent, spreading a radiant glow across the hills. Each blade of grass caught the light, and the landscape transformed from a shadowed dreamscape into a vivid, living canvas. Shades of amber melted into gold, and the sky above Thursina stretched endlessly, painted in delicate tones of pink and tangerine. The trees that once stood as dark outlines now revealed their details: rough bark, trembling leaves, the subtle dance of light through branches. The soft wind carried the scent of soil and pine, blending with faint traces of smoke from our small campfire. In the distance, clouds moved lazily, brushing the tips of mountains like slow-moving waves. Everything seemed alive yet calm, as if nature had opened its eyes and was smiling quietly. There was a sacred rhythm to this awakening, the silent movement of light, the quiet murmur of life, the harmony between stillness and motion. I stood there, absorbing it all, realizing how the simplest things, the warmth on my skin, the shimmering dew, the golden sky, could speak so profoundly to the heart.
Tapi bener-bener loh kalau ini ada khas aja motornya. Gue nggak expect sih. Gue sebenarnya pakai motor.
As the golden hours settled upon Thursina, a soft breeze began to drift from the valley. It carried a freshness that felt almost spiritual, as though the hills themselves were exhaling after the long night. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the air wash over me, cool and scented with grass and sunlit earth. In that instant, I could almost hear the heartbeat of the land, the distant rustle of trees, the faint trickle of a hidden stream, the hum of morning life awakening. The sunlight poured gently across the landscape, igniting everything it touched. The shadows retreated, slipping back into crevices, surrendering to the warmth. The breeze played with the edges of our tents, making them flutter softly like quiet flags of peace. Each breath felt fuller, slower, and freer, as if the act of breathing itself had become a form of gratitude. The world was vast, yet strangely intimate. It felt like standing in the center of something infinite but kind. Time didn't pass here. It lingered, golden and generous, wrapping every moment in a serene calmness that words could barely contain.
mau kenceng juga kan pasti pelan kan tas ya. Rusak.
Buat time lapse.
Cakep sih ini.
The sunlight now draped across the slope like a flowing river of gold. I watched as every ripple of grass caught its glow, each drop of dew turning into a tiny sun. The beauty of it all was almost too much to grasp. I felt a deep stillness, not the kind born of silence, but one that comes when your soul finally stops running. The light seemed to slow everything. The birds gliding lazily in the sky, the faint curl of smoke, even the motion of my thoughts. I realized that in the presence of such beauty, there was nothing to chase, nothing to prove. The world didn't demand words or understanding. It only asked to be seen, truly seen. The reflections of sun and the dew felt like tiny mirrors, each one holding a secret glimpse of the universe. Thursina was not just a hill. It was a reminder that wonder is not something you find far away. It's always been there, waiting quietly for you to pause long enough to notice. As the light grew brighter, warmth began to soak into the soil and rise gently into the air. The cold of the night was gone, leaving only traces of memory in the faint mist that still clung to the valley. The first bees began to drift among the wildflowers nearby, their soft buzzing harmonizing with the distant songs of birds. Everything felt renewed, like the earth itself had taken a long breath and begun again. I sat quietly, running my fingers over the damp grass, watching sunlight play across my hands. It was a simple moment, but it carried the weight of eternity. The warmth didn't just touch my skin. It reached deeper, thawing worries I hadn't realized I was still carrying. Thursina had a way of healing without trying. The hill didn't preach. It simply existed, and in its presence, peace felt effortless. The sunlight now poured freely, a cascade of golden warmth that wrapped the camp in soft brilliance, and I knew that this morning would live inside me long after we left.
Hari Minggu jam pagi. Ini dia, nasi kuning. Telur apa nih? Telur ceplok. Anjing telur ceplok tuh. Ayo tuh. Mau orek sambal kacang. Berarti elit kan maksudnya telurnya. Kok di Bandung?
From where I sat, the horizon seemed endless. Layers of mist still drifted among the distant hills, glowing faintly beneath the strengthening sun. Each ridge faded into the next, like echoes of light stretching into infinity. I imagined the world beyond, villages waking, rivers sparkling, fields breathing under the same dawn sky. It was humbling to realize how vast everything was, and yet how gently it all connected. The sunrise wasn't just ours. It belonged to everything, to every bird taking flight, every leaf turning toward the light, every person somewhere in the distance greeting a new day. Thursina was a vantage point not just for sight, but for understanding. The horizon whispered continuity of unseen lives unfolding beyond the curve of the hills. And as the sun climbed higher, that whisper turned into quiet reassurance. No matter how far we go, the light finds us all. By the time the sun stood higher in the sky, our little camp had transformed. The golden glow touched every corner. Our tents, our shoes, even the metal cups glinting by the fire. Though we spoke little, our movements became slower, more deliberate, as if we didn't want to disturb the fragile harmony of the morning. Every sound, the crackle of a twig, the faint rustle of fabric, the wind sighing through the trees, felt amplified, sacred. There was celebration in stillness, joy in the absence of noise. Thursina didn't ask for applause. Its beauty existed without needing acknowledgement, and yet, in our hearts, a silent gratitude grew. To witness the birth of light in such purity was a privilege few moments in life could match. As the warmth deepened, I realized this wasn't just another sunrise. It was a quiet ceremony of renewal, nature's soft way of reminding us that every dawn is a second chance.
Next gini kita harus ada persiapan ini. Ada yang kompor portable, bawa kompor portable. Gak ada. Gak ada. Mau nasi, mana?
The last remnants of night lingered only in the shadows under the trees. There, in small pockets of coolness, darkness surrendered gracefully. The forest edge shimmered with sunlight, creating a mosaic of gold and green that danced across the leaves. I wandered a few steps away from the tents, drawn by the way the light filtered through the canopy. Each beam looked solid, almost tangible, a visible thread connecting heaven and earth. I could feel the ground warming beneath my feet, the air alive with quiet energy. Even the shadows seemed softer now, no longer some of the fear, but a necessary contrast that made the light even more profound. Thursina taught balance and silence. Light needs shadow, warmth needs cold, and joy finds its meaning only beside stillness. Standing there, between the last breath of night and the full bloom of day, I felt perfectly at home in both. By mid-morning, the entire hill pulsed with life. The sunlight no longer felt delicate. It was strong, bold, confident. The rhythm of the day had begun. Yet there was no urgency in it. The breeze carried laughter, not from us, but from nature itself. The playful rustle of leaves, the buzzing chorus of insects, the whisper of grass bowing to the wind. I stood watching the shadows shorten, tracing the slow dance of time on the hillside. The world felt like a song with no beginning or end, just a flowing melody of light and movement. I realized that mornings like this were never meant to be captured or kept. They were meant to be lived, felt, and remembered in silence. Thursina was alive in every ray of light, in every gust of air that passed through my hair. Its beauty wasn't fleeting. It was eternal, woven into the rhythm of the morning and the quiet beating of my heart.
Enggak, belum Depok. Tahun baru. Dekat sini kan? Oh. Berarti juga pasar minggu ya? Itu sama Isan dekat teman-teman. Ngelewatin UI nggak? Hah? Ngelewatin UI nggak? Enggak, kalau ngelewatin banget. Jadi rumah gue di sini, UI di sini. Kalau ke Jakarta soalnya.
By mid-morning, the entire hill pulsed with life. The sunlight no longer felt delicate. It was strong, bold, confident. The rhythm of the day had begun, yet there was no urgency in it. The breeze carried laughter, not from us, but from nature itself. The playful rustle of leaves, the buzzing chorus of insects, the whisper of grass bowing to the wind. I stood watching the shadows shorten, tracing the slow dance of time on the hillside. The world felt like a song with no beginning or end, just a flowing melody of light and movement. I realized that mornings like this were never meant to be captured or kept. They were meant to be lived, felt, and remembered in silence. Thursina was alive in every ray of light, in every gust of air that passed through my hair. Its beauty wasn't fleeting. It was eternal, woven into the rhythm of the morning and the quiet beating of my heart. As the sun climbed higher, the hill became a living symphony of light and motion. The golden hue mellowed into soft daylight, and every color grew bolder. Greens richer, blues deeper, whites brighter. The grass swayed like waves on a quiet sea, and the sunlight reflected from each blade created 1,000 tiny flashes, like nature's own orchestra of brilliance. A butterfly fluttered past, its wings catching the light in fleeting patterns of amber and ivory. The forest edge shimmered with motion. Birds darted between branches, their wings slicing through sunbeams like ribbons. Everything pulsed in rhythm with the earth itself. The world was fully awake now, yet the peace of the early morning lingered in every corner. Thursina no longer whispered, it sang. And though the day had begun, the magic of dawn still hung in the air, a golden memory suspended between hours.
Ini bukan nasi uduk kan? Masa itu kayak bukan ada nasi uduk.
Nasi uduk Jakarta, nasi uduk Betawi sama Bogor tuh beda.
The scent of morning air carried something indescribable.
Gue pernah beli kan.
Part pine, part wildflower, part dream. It wasn't just fragrance, it was feeling. Breathing it, it was like inhaling a memory of something ancient and kind. The world below shimmered with soft heat, but up here the breeze kept its cool touch, brushing gently against my skin. I could sense the land's quiet pulse, steady and patient. Even the clouds seemed content to drift slowly, as if they too wanted to linger above Thursina a little longer. The scent of the soil mixed with sunlight, an aroma only found in places untouched by haste. Every inhale was a reminder of presence. Every exhale a small surrender to peace. The stillness wasn't empty. It was full, layered with unseen life. Somewhere in that serenity, I felt the boundaries of time blur. The present stretched endlessly, and for a moment, it felt like eternity was breathing beside me. Standing beneath the vast, unbroken sky of Thursina, I felt both small and infinite. The blue above stretched beyond imagination, flawless and open, unmarked by clouds or plains or traces of the world below. It was a kind of sky that made you look up and forget everything else. The sunlight washed over my face, and I thought about how many generations before it stood beneath this same endless dome, watching the same golden light spill across the hills. There was something comforting in that thought. This sky had seen joys, sorrow, storms, and sunrises long before we arrived, and would continue long after. Beneath it, I felt humbled, yet connected, to nature, to time, to the silent flow of existence. Thursina wasn't just a place. It was a reminder that beauty isn't fleeting. It's the sky itself, eternal and patient, waiting for us to notice. Time began to move again, softly and without rush. The golden hour of morning shifted into clarity of day, but the essence of dawn still lingered like a faint melody that refuses to fade. Shadows shortened, the mist dissolved completely, and the air turned lighter, easier to breathe. It felt as though the world had exhaled and settled into its rhythm. From afar, the laughter of unseen travelers echoed faintly across the valley, a small, human note in the vast score of nature's music. Time on Thursina didn't tick. It flowed. Each second slipped into the next like sunlight crossing a leaf. I realized how rare it was to witness the slow unfolding of time without urgency, without distraction. The hill didn't move faster to please the sun, nor did the sun hurry its climb. Everything existed perfectly in pace with itself. That calm rhythm taught me more than any word could. By now, the light had settled into full day, yet the embrace of morning remained. The world seemed softer here, as though Thursina filtered out everything harsh and left only what was purer. The distant landscape glittered faintly under the sun, the valleys glowing like silk. I could feel the warmth deep in my chest, not just from the air, but from a quiet joy that lingered after witnessing such a sunrise. The body might forget the climb, the chill, the small discomforts of camping. But the heart never forgets a morning like this. Every sight, every scent, every whisper wind felt imprinted within me. Thursina didn't ask for words or gratitude. Its gift was already complete. The hill offered a moment of harmony between man and nature, between light and life. And as I stood there, basking in that gentle warmth, I knew that the memory of this morning would follow me wherever I went.
Gue setengah laras dulu terus dia waktu gue
The sun stood proudly above the ridge now, and yet the hill retained its tranquil grace. I watched as the grass continued its gentle sway, moving with the faintest touch of wind. The dance of nature wasn't hurried. It was deliberate, peaceful, ancient. Every leaf that trembled, every shadow that shifted, seemed to move in quiet synchronization. The bees continued their work among the flowers, patient and purposeful. The rhythm of Thursina wasn't the rhythm of man. It was older, slower, wiser. Watching it unfold was like reading a language written in motion, a poem without words. Even the rocks seemed alive, their surfaces glowing faintly under the steady sun. Nothing here tried to be more than it was. And perhaps that was the secret to its beauty. Simplicity was its perfection. Thursina didn't demand attention. It earned it through stillness. Standing near the cliff's edge, I looked down upon the valleys bathed in sunlight. Rivers glimmered faintly, snaking through the distant greens like veins of light. I could see rooftops far below, specks of civilization resting quietly under the vast sky. Yet, even with the world below, Thursina felt untouchable, like a realm suspended between heaven and earth. The breeze at the edge carried the scent of pine and stone, pure and grounding. It reminded me that peace isn't found in isolation, but in perspective. From here, problems felt small, life felt simple, and every worry dissolved into horizon. The edge wasn't a place of fear. It was freedom, the boundary where you see everything clearly. Thursina offered that clarity, the beauty of distance, the calm of height, and the serenity of knowing you're part of something immeasurable.
Ayo ke atas, Kak.
Though the sun was now high, the spirit of dawn refused to leave. The light on Thursina didn't fade. It lingered, soft and forgiving, bathing everything in a quiet luminescence. The tents glowed faintly, their fabric warm under the sun, while the hills shimmered as though dusted with silver. It was a kind of light that holds memories, the afterglow of wonder that stays long after the moment has passed. I stood still, unwilling to move, afraid that any step might break the spell. Around me, life continued. Birds flew, insects hummed, the wind whispered. But inside, time paused again. The hill had shared its story, and now it rested. Thursina was no longer just a place we visited. It had become part of us, a sunrise we would carry in our eyes and hearts long after we descended its slopes. As the sun climbed higher, the golden tones began to dissolve into a brilliant daylight. The mist that once floated like a soft veil over the valley now shimmered like silver smoke before fading into transparency. The mountain range revealed its full majesty. Every ridge and contour etched sharply under the growing light. We could finally see distant villages awakening below, smoke rising from morning fires, faint echoes of roosters, and people starting their day unaware that from above, they were part of a grand landscape painting. I felt a strange sense of gratitude, not for any single thing, but for being alive, for witnessing something so ancient and real. The air had lost its icy edge, but still carried a cool freshness, like the breath of the earth itself. My friends and I stood silently for a while, each lost in our own thoughts, but our smiles said everything. The sunrise had filled us with quiet joy, one that will remain long after we left this hill. As we began preparing breakfast, the sunlight filtered through the pine trees, painting golden streaks across our campsite. The scent of brewing coffee mingled with the earthy fragrance of dew-soaked grass. Laughter returned to our voices, lighter now, as if the sunrise had burned away the last traces of fatigue. Someone played soft music from a small speaker, and the melody blended perfectly with the morning rhythm. The rustling of leaves, the distant chirping of birds, and the whispering breeze that moved like poetry between the trees. Every sound seemed amplified by peace. I remember sitting on a rock, holding my mug, and staring again at the horizon where the sun had risen just an hour ago. It felt strange how something so ordinary, a sunrise that happens every day, could feel like a private miracle when witnessed in the right place, with the right people at the right time. After breakfast, we wandered around the slopes of Bukit Thursina, exploring small paths lined with wildflowers and mossy stones. The mountain air remained cool and gentle, wrapping around us like a comforting blanket. Every few minutes, someone would stop to take photos, unable to resist capturing what words could not describe. I watched the clouds form shapes above the distant peaks, sometimes resembling dragons or ships sailing the sky. The world below looked peaceful and simple, a patchwork of forest fields and winding roads glinting faintly in the sunlight. In that moment, I realized how easily we forget the beauty that exists just a few hours from the city's chaos. Thursina wasn't just a hill. It was a reminder that nature's wonders are timeless, waiting quietly for those who make the effort to climb and look.
Pas banget sama udah keluar dari tengah-tengah menit. Kapan dari kapan? Pas banget hari ini sunset sunrise. Kalau hujan sih kacau sih, nggak dapet sih.
Later in the morning, the warmth became stronger, yet it was still pleasant. The shadows of trees shrank, and our tents glowed softly in the sun's reflection. Some of us lay on picnic mats, resting and chatting lazily while others packed their gear. The hill had transformed from a mystical, fog-covered place at dawn to a bright, vibrant haven under full sun. The soundscape changed too. The whispering wind was replaced by the hum of insects and distant laughter from other campers. I looked again toward the east, remembering how that horizon had exploded with light just hours before. The memory already felt like a dream, fragile but vivid. If I closed my eyes, I could still feel the sun's first touch, the crisp mountain air, and that rush of wonder that made time stand still. Before descending, we gathered once more at the spot where we had watched the sunrise. The view now was different, clear, bold, and awake. Yet beneath that daylight brilliance lay the echo of dawn's quiet magic. We took one last group photo, tried to freeze a moment that words could never truly preserve. I felt a deep calm, knowing that even though we would soon return to the noise of everyday life, a part of us would remain here, among the mist, the pines, and the golden morning light. The hill had shared its secret with us, and we had listened with open hearts. Every journey, I thought, is not about reaching the peak, but about finding that fleeting instant when everything feels connected, sky, earth, and soul.
naik, terus kalau 2 orang nggak naik.
Gue nggak pernah ngeliat kayak gitu. Gue pernah ada, cuman
Yang mana? Kalau kopi semua itu
ada pasti ada.
The descent was gentle, and the path seemed easier than before. Maybe it was because our hearts were lighter now, filled with the memory of that sunrise. We talk about coming back someday, maybe in another season, to see how the hill changes with time. Some joked about camping in the rain. Others dreamed of a night under a meteor shower. Every word carried a promise, not just a return to Bukit Thursina, but keep seeking the same feeling of peace and wonder wherever life takes us. As the peak grew smaller behind us, the morning light followed, glinting off our backpacks like a farewell blessing. The hills seemed to smile in silence, watching us leave with hearts still glowing. That night, back home, the memory of Thursina lingered in my mind. When I closed my eyes, I could still see the golden horizon, the soft mist curling around the trees, and the faces of my friends illuminated by the newborn sun. It wasn't just another camping trip. It was a moment of clarity, a reminder that beauty doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers through light, wind, and silence. The sunrise at Bukit Thursina had shown us something profound, that the world is endlessly beautiful when we choose to look closely, breathe deeply, and simply be present. And though days would pass and life would return to its hurried rhythm, that image of the sun rising above the hills of Bogor would remain forever imprinted in the quiet corners of my soul.
Di sini enak kemana nih?
Puncak.
Puncak banget. Jadi bisa. Tadi hemat baterai udah lu matiin lu? Belum. Lama nih. Belum lupa.
Days passed, yet the memory of that sunrise refused to fade. It was not merely an image imprinted in my mind, but a vibration that lingered somewhere deep within, like a quiet hum of existence that refused to silence itself. Each morning afterward, as the city woke to the dull rhythm of engines and hurried footsteps, I found myself reaching inward for that same golden calm. The sun that had risen above the hills of Bogor had done more than illuminate the sky. It had illuminated a part of me that I hadn't known was asleep. It was strange how light could do that, how a moment of stillness could reveal entire universes within a single breath. I began to realize that the mountain had not only offered me beauty, it had offered me awareness. The rustle of the wind, the rhythm of the earth beneath my feet, the shimmer of the mist dissolving into warmth, all of it had been speaking the same ancient language of being. The universe, in that moment, had whispered, "Look closely, and you will see that you are part of this." Since then, even the smallest fragments of daily life seemed to carry faint reflections of that dawn. The glint of sunlight on glass windows, the way steam curled from a cup of tea, the hush that falls just before evening rain. Each one felt like a reminder of something infinite dressed in simplicity. The sunrise had become a teacher, silent yet eloquent, showing me that beauty doesn't demand attention, it invites awareness. I began walking slower, breathing deeper, noticing the subtleties that had once gone unseen, the pulse of life within stillness. There was no grand revelation, no thunderous moment of awakening, only a soft unfolding, a sense that life had always been sacred, and I had simply forgotten how to see it. Thursina had reintroduced me to the rhythm of being alive, the quiet miracle that hides in ordinary hours. At night, when I looked at the stars from my window, I could almost feel the same mountain breeze brushing past my face again. I would close my eyes and recall how the horizon had glowed like molten gold, How the mist had swirled like silk around the trees. How my friend's laughter had echoed faintly against the valley. It was as if time itself had stretched between then and now, connecting those moments in one continuous thread of consciousness. The mountain was no longer a place on a map. It had become a state of mind, a stillness I could return to whenever life became too loud. In that silence, I began to sense that the universe doesn't exist around us, but through us, that we are not observers of its beauty, but expressions of it. The same light that had painted the skies above Thursina was the same light that flickered quietly within the soul. And once you see that connection, it is impossible to unsee it.
Ini strategi kita harus ada persiapan ini. Ada yang kompor portable, bawa kompor portable.
Gak ada.
Ada. Mau nasi, mau ada. Pisan sempat diajakin katanya nggak bisa ya? Pisan.
Jajan
Diajakin.
Iya nggak bisa ya. Ajaib mah nih. Hari ini gua ambil dulu lah.
Ngapain ngikut Ikhmas ini?
There is a particular silence that follows moments of profound beauty. Not the absence of sound, but the suspension of thought. After returning from the mountain, I found myself chasing that silence in unexpected places. Sometimes I hid in the hush before dawn when the world is still half asleep. Other times appeared in the middle of a crowded street, when, for a brief second, everything seemed to slow. I began to sense that silence is not the opposite of noise, but its foundation, the canvas upon which all experience is painted. Without it, life becomes a blur of unexamined motion. With it, every heartbeat, every whisper of wind takes on meaning. Thursina had taught me how to listen, not just with my ears, but with the whole being. Silence, I discovered, has weight. It presses gently on the soul, not to suffocate, but to remind, to draw attention to what lies beneath the constant hum of existence. In that stillness, memories surface like ripples in a lake. Faces of friends laughing around the fire, the scent of pine smoke, the cool texture of morning air brushing against skin still warmed by sleep. Each recollection carried its own quiet pulse, reminded me that time is not a straight line but a circle, that what we call the past never truly leaves. It merely changes form. As the days unfolded, the noise of the city returned with its usual ferocity. Engines roaring, phones buzzing, people moving with hurried purpose. Yet somewhere within, a calmness persisted, like a secret rhythm only I could hear. It was the same rhythm I had felt in the whispering trees at Thursina, in the quiet awe that fell over us when the sun first touched the peaks. It followed me into crowded rooms and dimly lit cafes, into restless nights when sleep refused to come. I realized that silence was not a place to visit, but a state to carry, a refuge that lived within, even amid chaos. In that understanding, the smallest things began to matter again. The slow curl of steam from a morning cup of coffee, the way light folded through curtains, the gentle pulse of rain against glass. All these became echoes of that same mountain hush. It was as though Thursina had breathed something eternal into me, something that refused to be drowned by the world's clamor. I no longer sought to escape the noise. I sought to move through it, carrying stillness like a lantern through a storm.
Langsung pindahin aja ya ke laptop ya. Editin dikit, set, masukin SW anjing.
Ini ben ngomongin ini juga ya.
Dan semalam yang sama kita rata-rata angkatan kemarin dulu, bukan angkatan lu.
Yang mana?
Semalam.
Yang menapa lama pita.
Nah,
Adik kelas gue.
oh di kelas.
Mana nggak ada cowok gue duduk paling pengen jalanin pancok gitu. Lu lagi berapa nonton yang lain?
Gue ada minum, lupa.
Oh, ya.
That night at Thursina, Long after the laughter had faded and the stars had begun their slow dance across the endless dark, we gathered once more around the campfire. The flames crackled with a language of their own, soft pops and sighs that seemed to speak to something ancient inside us. Each of us sat in silence for a while, gazing into the hypnotic swirl of amber and gold. It was strange how the fire reflected our own souls, restless yet alive, flickering and fierce, longing to rise but grounded by the earth that fed it. In that moment, conversation wasn't about words. It was about presence, the way eyes met across the firelight, the unspoken acknowledgement that we were part of something larger than ourselves. The air was cool and heavy with the scent of pine and smoke. One of my friends began to hum a tune, low and haunting, and soon, without realizing it, we were all humming along. No lyrics, no rhythm, just voices blending into the night, as though the mountain itself was listening. It wasn't a song we knew. It was something we created together, something born from the silence and the stars. That sound seemed to rise into the sky and disappear among the constellations, carrying pieces of our stories with it. Then came the words, soft confessions and reflections that only the night could hold. Someone spoke about their fears of growing older, another about dreams they had buried long ago. The fire burned between us like a witness, casting light on faces that glowed with honesty. No one interrupted. No one judged. It was as though the mountain demanded truth, and the fire made it safe to speak. I realized that connection wasn't forged through perfection or constant cheer. It was born from vulnerability, from the courage to be seen in our most fragile state. We stayed like that for hours, letting time dissolve. The stars shifted overhead, and somewhere in the forest, an owl called out, a sound so pure it silenced us once again. I remember looking up and feeling a kind of humility that words could never express. The fire, the forest, the faces of my friends. Everything felt infinite yet fleeting, a paradox that defined existence itself. I understood that night that every flame, no matter how bright, must fade, but the warmth it leaves behind can last a lifetime. When we finally doused the fire, a faint trail of smoke rose into the night, curling like a prayer. We stood there, our eyes following its path until it vanished. No one spoke as we made our way back to our tents. There was no need. The mountain had given us a gift, not in the form of sights or souvenirs, but in the raw awareness of what it means to belong, to be human beneath the vast, indifferent sky. That memory, more than any photograph or journal entry, would remain as the quiet ember I'd carry wherever I went. The morning after the sunrise at Thursina arrived slowly, like a secret being revealed. The world seemed to hold its breath in that quiet in-between, where night hadn't fully let go and day hadn't yet taken over. The mist lay thick over the valley, curling around our tents like a soft veil. Dew shimmered on every leaf, turning ordinary grass into a mosaic of diamonds. For a while, we didn't speak. We simply stood there, watching the landscape shift under the awakening sun, each of us caught in our own private reverie. It felt like the mountain itself was reluctant to release us, as though it knew the moment we descended, something within us would change, not in a way we could measure, but in a way we could feel. As we began packing up, I felt a pang of melancholy. Every rope untied, every peg pulled from the earth felt like a farewell. The mountain had become something more than a place. It had become a teacher, and leaving it felt like walking away from a truth I was only beginning to understand. I found myself moving slower than usual, savoring the texture of the soil beneath my shoes, the distant echo of birds hidden in the fog. There was a rhythm to it all, a natural heartbeat that pulsed through the land, steady and eternal. In contrast, our steps seemed so temporary, so fragile. It made me realize how small we are in the grand scale of things, yet how our awareness of that smallness is what gives us meaning. The path down was steep and silent. We didn't fill it with chatter like we did on the way up. There was no need to. The mountain had already said what it needed to say, through the wind, the fire, the sunrise. Now it was our turn to listen. Every crunch of gravel beneath our feet sounded deliberate, like punctuation marks in a sentence that only nature could write. Occasionally, someone would stop and take one last photograph, though I wondered if any image could ever truly capture the feeling of standing on that hill, suspended between earth and sky. Cameras can frame beauty, but they cannot hold presence, the heartbeat, the breath, the stillness that gives life its sacred texture. At one point, I turned back and looked up at the ridge we had just left. The sunlight was breaking to the last veil of mist, pouring over the slope like molten gold. It was breathtaking, but not in the dramatic, postcard-perfect sense. It was quiet beauty, the kind that humbles rather than overwhelms. I felt an ache then, a longing not just for the view, but for the feeling of belonging that came with it. Perhaps that's what all journeys are about. We climb to find something, and when we do, we realize it cannot be carried back down. It stays there in the place where it was found, while what we take home is a reflection, a fragment of stillness folded into our restless hearts. The descent became a meditation. Step after step, breath after breath, I could feel myself returning to the world, to noise, to schedules, to endless motion. Yet beneath it all, a subtle clarity lingered. It wasn't enlightenment in the grand, dramatic sense. It was something quieter, a recognition that life's true essence often hides in simplicity. The whisper of wind through the trees, the crunch of gravel, the warmth of sunlight on tired skin. These were all forms of grace, scattered across the path like breadcrumbs leading us home. By the time we reached the base, the sun was high, and the mist had vanished entirely. Villagers were tending to their fields. Children were laughing near the streams, and life moved with its usual rhythm. Yet, for me, the world felt slightly altered, brighter somehow, as if the mountain had adjusted my vision. I understood then that we never truly leave the places that change us. They continue to live within us, reshaping how we see everything else. Thursina wasn't just behind me now. It was within me, in the way I breathed, in the way I noticed the light, in the way I listened to silence. And as we walked toward the road that would take us home, I whispered a silent promise to return, not just to the mountain, but to that version of myself who had, for one brief sunrise, remembered how to simply be.
Gue gak pernah ngeliat kayak gitu. Gue pernah. Gak ada, cuman ada, pasti ada, tapi gue
When I finally returned to the rhythm of daily life, Thursina did not fade. It lingered like a soft echo within my chest, not loud, not insistent, but steady, pulsing in the spaces between moments. I could hear it in the quiet hum of the morning before the city awoke, in the low whisper of the wind that slipped through half-open windows. Sometimes, while walking to work or sitting in a crowded cafe, I would feel a sudden stillness, a memory stirring beneath the noise, reminded me of the hill and that sunrise that seemed to breathe the entire world into one long exhale. It wasn't nostalgia that visited me. It was presence, that pure awareness I had felt when light first touched the mist. Thursina had not only shown me beauty, it had shown me how to see beauty. Patiently, reverently, without grasping, days moved as they always did, with their small obligations and familiar distractions. Yet something fundamental had shifted in me, something invisible but certain. I no longer rushed through moments as if they were checkpoints to be passed. Instead, I lingered in them, tasting the slowness of time. Even routine gestures began to carry weight. Washing my hands under cool water, watching sunlight scatter through droplets, feeling the faint warmth of my breath in cold air. Everything seemed to have depth now, a dimension of quiet awareness that I had once overlooked. Thursina had awakened a sensitivity to existence, an understanding that life doesn't need to shout to be extraordinary. The miraculous hides in the ordinary, waiting for us to slow down enough to notice. There were nights when I would step out onto my balcony and gaze at the city lights flickering below. They resembled the fireflies that dance in the valley beneath Thursina's sky, a human constellation mirroring the stars. Yet, unlike the mountain silence, the city buzzed with restless energy, 1,000 dreams woven into neon threads. Still, amidst the noise, I found comfort in the thought that both the mountain and the city belonged to the same vast pulse of the universe. The same wind that brushed the pines of Thursina now brushed my face. The same sun that had risen behind those hills now descended behind the skyline. Separation, I realized, was an illusion. The sacred is not confined to one place. It follows us wherever we choose to see it. One evening, I came across a photo we had taken that morning on the hill. The sun bursting over the horizon, our silhouettes standing still, tiny against the vastness. For a moment, I felt the mountain breathe again through that image. But unlike before, I didn't long to return there physically. I understood that the mountain was never about geography. It was about awareness. Thursina existed not on a map, but in the still corners of my mind, in the part of me that remembers how to pause, how to look without wanting, how to be without doing. In that sense, it was eternal. The mountain would never age, never fade. It would continue to rise inside me whenever I remembered how to be quiet enough to hear its echo. And perhaps that is what all journeys, pilgrimages, and sunrises are meant to teach us, that we travel not to escape, but to awaken, to strip away the noise long enough to hear the universe speaking softly within. The echo of Thursina was not just nature's song. It was my own consciousness calling me home, reminding me that I belonged to something larger, older, infinite. Every sunrise since then has carried a fragment of that truth. I watch the sky now not as a spectacle, but as a dialogue, a silent communion between the earth beneath my feet and the stars that watch from afar. Because in the end, the mountain didn't give me answers. It gave me silence. And in that silence, I found everything I had been too distracted to feel. The weight of existence, the beauty of impermanence, the grace of simply being alive.
Next gimana lagi Pak? Anjir.
Gue kalau ke Bandung dulu sih gue ngodain motor,
Iya anjing motor.
Asa dimubahin mungkin.
Huh?
There are days now when the wind carries with a faint scent of pine and damp soil, and without warning, I am back there, on that ridge at Thursina, watching the mist drift like thoughts half remembered. It happens in the middle of ordinary moments, while waiting a crosswalk, while standing by the window on a quiet afternoon, while walking through a narrow street just after rain. Something about the way the wind moves, gentle, watchful, ancient, feels like recognition, as though the mountain remembers me too, as though it exhales across miles to remind me of what it taught, that everything alive breathes the same air, that memory is not bound by distance but carried in motion. I find myself closing my eyes when that breeze comes, letting it brush across my skin like a soft whisper. Remember who you were when the world was still. And I do remember. I remember the trembling hush before dawn, when darkness hadn't yet surrendered but hope was already in the air. I remember how we stood shoulder to shoulder, speechless, as the sun broke open the sky, not violently but tenderly, as if the light itself was shy. I remember how each gust of wind that morning felt like a benediction, a soft touch reminding us that to exist is already a miracle. Those memories return not as images, but as sensations. The chill on my fingertips, the scent of burning wood, the hum of insect awakening with delight. They don't belong to the past. They rise within me as if they never left. It is the wind that stirs them, perhaps because the wind has no boundaries, no possessions, only direction, only purpose. Sometimes I think about how strange it is that we humans need to go far away just to remember what is near. We travel to mountains to feel grounded, to forests to learn stillness, to the sea to understand depth. Yet all these truths already live inside us. Thursina, with all its quiet splendor, was never about distance. It was about reflection. It was a mirror the universe held up, showing me the stillness I had forgotten within. When the wind remembers, I realize that I, too, am a vessel of those same elements. Air, water, fire, earth, and the silent spark that binds them all. Awareness. The same breath that rustled the leaves now moves through me. The same light that crowned the hills at dawn now glows behind my eyes. How could separation exist when the very atoms of my being once danced in the starlight that birthed the mountains themselves? That thought changes everything. It transforms solitude into communion, silence into music, and the ordinary into something sacred. When I breathe, I no longer take air for granted. I recognize it as ancient, air that has passed through forests, oceans, lungs of birds, and the hearts of those who lived long before me. Each breath becomes a prayer without words, a gentle participation in the great, endless conversation of existence. I realize now that the mountain never truly said goodbye. It continues to speak through the wind, reminding me that life's beauty is not something possessed but to perceive. Fleeting, yes, but infinite in its repetition. And so, when the wind brushes past me on a crowded street or across an open field, I smile, because I know it carries the same rhythm that once moved through the trees of Thursina, a rhythm that connects all things visible and invisible. It tells me that the mountain still breathes, that the sunrise still burns somewhere beyond sight, and that within every breath I take lies a memory of that morning, a fragment of eternity folded inside a single moment of awareness. The wind remembers, and in remembering, it keeps me awake.